Okay, so let's go ahead and let's begin. So today is December 18th, 2020. So short announcement, uh, we won't have a live lecture next Friday due to something I have that morning. So we won't have a live lecture next Friday morning. Depending on what we get through today, I may do a recording during the week and upload it. Uh, but uh, but I'm hoping that we may just have to do that. I may just give you the kind of read at home assignment for the next round of material. Okay, and today we shouldn't be here too long today. I've looked at the material again. I've reviewed it just now, and it's not a lengthy amount of material that we have to cover today. So, all right, let's 2 more weeks, guys. 2 more weeks, and we'll be done with 2020, and hopefully the new year will bring lots of changes. Right? Okay. Let me go ahead and pull up this guy here. Okay. All right, so today, actually, let me go back a page to the title page so you can see that. All right, so today we're on chapter 12. I've uploaded the materials for the practice stuff, the activities, and for the lab for both chapter 12 and chapter 13. I've also uploaded something for chapter 14. There was, where did I have that? We've also uploaded the activities, the practice activity for chapter 14, just to go ahead and get that out of the way and get that up there as well. So that should take us through the first of next year. So that should take us through to the first week of next year as far as the material you have available to you. All right. So, but today we're talking about chapter 12. We're going to talk about how to archive and copy files between systems. Now, some of you guys, I mean, you have been using Windows or Mac, for the majority of your life, and you probably know how to zip a file. You probably know how to take a group of files, highlight a group of files, and right-click on them and zip them. In some ways, that's basically what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing that through command line and command line arguments now. And then copying files between systems in the same way you know how to drag and drop. But for system administrators, for those of us who are just typical users of computers and even programmers, a lot of what we do depends on the user interface, depends on having a graphical user interface with mouse and clicks and not as much in the way of typing. But system administrators are just kind of a little bit different, and that they really rely heavily on the ability to quickly do things using the command line. And so we're going to teach you today how to archive a group of files and copy files between two systems using the command line. Okay. All right. So you'll get to know what a tar is, and how to copy files using a secure copy SCP. All right. So first chapter here, first section here, just talking about what is tar. So the tar command is going to be used to group files together into a single file archive. So like I said, you guys have probably dealt with that in doing that through a graphical user interface, through highlighting a group of files and right-clicking on them and clicking compress, or you might have done that or you might have done it the other way, taking a zip file and right-clicking on it and extract, or double-clicking on it just to see what's inside of it without extracting. All right, so the tar command basically is what Linux does that. Okay, now some of the details about how the tar command are using this, we're going to go over that in this section. So we use the C. By the way, the leading dash is not used for tar options. So when we go to run a tar command, we don't need that leading dash. Okay, so the C is for creating an archive. So if we type tar, that's our command, our option C says we're going to create an archive. Okay, if the next character is not C but T, then what we are saying is we want to list the contents of the archive. We don't want to get the contents, we just want to list it. Okay, and then X is for extract. So that would be taking the files that are inside of the archive and extracting them to a location. Now, if we use C and then F, what we're saying is we want to create an archive with this file name. Okay, so it's the file name of the archive that we're going to do something with. Verbosity is just a fancy word that means lots of words. So basically, verbosity just means we want to know more information. We want to see what gets added or what gets extracted. So if we were to do an extraction, just normal, it would take our files from inside of the archive and it would put them to wherever we're telling to put them, and it would just do it and we wouldn't see anything. There would be no output to the screen. But with the verbosity option in place, so if we do the V option, then we would see the files that would get extracted. We would see a listing. So it's useful if we want to, when they're being extracted, to be able to see them as well so that we can know what we've got. Okay. All right, so let's look at an example, archive.tar. All right, so with a CF, so we're going to create, okay, so we're going to tar, we're going to create an archive with the file name archive.tar. Okay, now the next things that we're going to tell it are the files that we want to add. Now we could do a list of files, we could do a directory. Okay, there's multiple ways we can do this. Okay, we can use that curly brace that we talked about in previous lectures, the curly brace notation to be able to put multiple files. So like, you know, file curly brace 1.3 curly brace, and that would give us files 1, 2, and 3. If we knew that this was the only files that existed in the directory that we're in, right, the only ones with the naming like this, so there's no file 4, in other words, we could do file star, right? So the wildcard character, and then we would get everything that is file and then something else. Okay, let's see. By the way, when archiving the files using absolute path names like what we'll see down here in this example, the leading slash is removed. The reason why is that when we go to copy a tar file, a compressed file from one location to another, a lot of times we want to extract it on the new location to basically recreate the environment. So a lot of times what we'll use this for is we'll use it as a backup, like a backup, or to create a similar user on a new system. So what we might do is we might archive all of the files in the current user system, and let's say we're in the student user or whatever the username is, and we might compress all of the files that are in that user's system and all of those files that are in that user's home directory. And then when we compress it, it creates this one archive file, and we can push that out. We can copy that archive file out to a server location. We can copy that archive file out to a new system that we've just started. We can copy it a bunch of different places, but those are probably the most common. And then when that file gets to that new system, what do? We extract it there. And now we've essentially created a copy of the user that's on the first system, and we created a copy of that user on the new system. All right. And so by removing this leading slash, then wherever we extract wherever we extract that archive to, it just kind of takes on that same location. So basically what we would do is we could be in the user home directory. We could tar, everything in their home directory into one archive, take that archive, move it to a new system. Then on that new system, as the user, we extract that archive to that location, and it just creates a copy. All right, creates a copy of that original first user. All right, like I said, you can tar, you can archive a directory. So here, what this is going to do is it's going to create a tar directory. It's going to create an archive directory with the file name /root, so in the root directory, etc.tar. Now, what's going to go into that archive? Everything in the etc directory. Okay, and when we see what's inside of the archive here, using the T option to list the contents. So we list the contents of the etc.tar. Notice the slash in front of etc is removed. Okay. So it got put in there without that leading slash put in there. Okay. So in addition to listing the contents, we can extract using that X option. So if we go and we see, we might want to make a backup of something like the etc backup here. Yeah. Go into there, we can extract using the file name, and this is what we're going to extract, and it extracts to that current location. One note here, by default, when files are extracted from an archive, the UMask is subtracted from the permission. So it's basically that when they come out, the UMask is used for archived content. Okay. So basically, you may end up in a situation where the permissions that were original to the file may not be the same as permissions on the new extracted file. Okay. Now you can extract with the P option to maintain those permissions. Okay. So here we're extracting with the same permissions, all right, of this file, whatever this file was, and now the contents, when they come out, they have the same permissions as they did before. They're not going to use the default UMask to do the permissions now. Okay. So that's pretty important distinction, because we may end up having some files that we have certain permissions on them on the original, for the original file, but then when we go to extract them, they don't have the same permissions, and we're like, what's going on? I don't understand what happened. The UMask is used as default. So it's kind of like when files are created, whatever the permissions would be, that's basically what they would probably become. There are some distinctions, because again, it's subtracted, so it's not exact that they whatever the new file default would be, but for the most part, most files are going to operate that way. All right. Now, there's different compression methods. There are different formats, so like zip. You guys might know some of these, the bzip2, the gzip. They're just different compression algorithms. Okay. Hold on. Okay. The issue with the network. Okay. Let's see. So anyways, there's just different compression algorithms, right? It's basically what there's trade-offs for each one about in terms of size of the file, in terms of how big, how small, speed. Speed is also going to be a factor in how quickly they can be compressed. Okay. But if you want to have a particular compression algorithm used, right? Usually, we usually give it a particular extension. So gzip, we'll give it a gz or a tgz file name. For bzip2, the option we use, so by the way, the option for gzip we use is z or z. The option for bzip2 we use is j, lowercase j, and we give it a bz2 extension. And then for xz compression, we use capital J, and we give it an xz or xz. Okay, so if we want to create a gzip compressed file, right, we say, okay, we're creating z or z. We are creating a gzip compressed archive, giving the file name of this. I notice z means we will want to give it a tar.gz file name extension. And we'll compress the etc file, and that will take everything in the etc directory and put it into this backup file we're creating, this backup archive we're creating. All right. For a bzip2 compressed, we just do this j. If you guys, we're not going to go into it today. We're not going to go into details about what the different compression algorithms are. But if you want to look those up, feel free. It could be probably some interesting reading for you to get some information about that. But if we use the J option, then we'll be using that bzip2. And what we'll do is, when I show some examples here in a little bit, is I'll do the same backup 3 times, once with each of these, options, and we'll see what the file sizes are, and we'll see some of the differences between the two, between the 3 different versions. Okay. Yeah, and then for an xz compress, we use this capital J. All right, so it's all similar. I mean, not all stuff. It's pretty simpler. Okay. And in the same way with the extraction, if we want to extract something of a certain compression type, we use X to extract. We use the option to say what the type of compression is used, and we give it the archive name, and it extracts the stuff. It extracts the stuff inside of that to the current directory that we're in. So all 3, this is pretty straightforward. You see this extract, type, and file name. Okay, so I think this completes. Okay, so yes. So we do have an overview table here. So this is basically what we've talked about here. This is just a quick reference guide for some of the options used in the tar command. Okay, so that ends this first section here. There's a practice with a guided exercise. We'll go through that. We'll go through that when we show some examples here in a moment. Okay. But like I said, the first thing that we do will be to compress, right? We want to compress into an archive to make it smaller. And one of the big reasons, one of the main uses for compressing a lot of files into a small single archive is for us to be able to move them from one location to another, and specifically from one computer in our network to another computer in our network, right? We don't want we want to be able to copy things from one host to another host. So, reminder, let's go back a little bit and talk about the SSH command. So the SSH command was what we used for being able to log in and run commands on a remote system, but we couldn't use that to copy files between systems, right? So the SCP command is what we're going to use. So so CP, you guys are used to that command, the CP for copy, S. Whenever we see S on the front of a command, it's going to oftentimes mean secure. Right? So it's a secure copy command. Right? So we're going to securely copy, and it's going to operate very similar to SSH in the sense that, not SSH, what was it? The command to run a single command on the opposite system. I'm blanking. But the SCP command is going to be used for us to be able to copy some file from one host to another host. Yeah, either way, it's going to be from one host to another host. It's either going to be from the host we're on to a remote host somewhere else, or it's going to be from the remote host to the host that we are on. Okay. Now, we can use that same format that we use for SSH for logging in, right? Using that user at host. But now we have this colon, and we're going to give it a path. We're going to say, where do we want the file or the directory? Where do we want the file or directory to either be coming from or to go? Okay, so is it the source or the target? Okay. Again, just like with SSH, the user portion is optional. We don't have to log in as a specific user on the remote system. Just like we didn't have to log in as a specific user on the host system with SSH, we don't have to specify which user we're going to connect to on the remote host for SCP either. But if we don't use the user at portion, if we leave that off, we just give the host name, then what's going to happen is it's just going to say, okay, what's the current user? So here in this example, server X is where we're connecting to. It's going to say, okay, I'm going to connect to student at server X because, hey, you're logged in as student at desktop X. So that means that you clearly want to log in. You want to get access to this directory, on the server X server, and you want to continue using the student account. Okay. So here, what this is going to do is the first thing that we give it, so the SCP is our command. The first thing we give it is what we want to copy, what the source is. So we are taking what's in the etc directory, the yum.config file, the yum.conf, which is the yum config file, configuration file, right? And we are taking this and we are moving it. We're wanting to copy. Oh, sorry. And one other I noticed as well. Sorry. And the etc hosts directory. Okay. So a file and a directory. We are taking these and we want to move them to server X in the home student directory. Okay. What's going to happen? It's going to ask us for the student at server X. Notice not our local password. It's going to ask us for our remote password. It's going to ask us for the student at server X's password. We type that in, and it's going to copy this file and this directory over to that new location. Okay. And if we want to do it the other way, we want to take a file from somewhere else on a remote machine, and we want to bring it to the local file system. We want to bring it to our local computer. Same thing, only this time we tell it the server and the file, or in this case the directory. File. Sorry. We take this and we bring it to our local home student directory. Okay. Notice that wherever it's being sent to needs to be a directory. So we can't take a file and move it to another file. We can't put a file inside of a file, right? That doesn't make sense. All right. So wherever we send this to needs to be a directory. Okay, and actually both of these, I may have misspoke. Both of these are examples of files being moved from one location to another. The etc host is a file, not a directory. Okay. Because if we want to copy a directory, we probably want to copy what's inside of the directory also. All right, we don't want to just copy the directory itself. We want to copy all the files that are inside of it. So here with the -R option, what happens is it says, okay, I want to take the remote directory. That's the so let's analyze. Let's talk through what we're getting. It's going to say go to server X to the root user. Look in the var directory for a log directory, and I want to copy that. So now, okay, so it's the root user on the server X, their log directory inside of their var directory, and that's what we're getting. And we want to bring that to our local system into our temp directory. Okay. And as we would expect, when this happens, the system says, okay, well, you need to tell me what the root password is on server X, because if you don't know that, then I'm not going to let you have this. Right? So we give it the password and everything's happy. Okay. And the -R option says, I want to also get everything that's inside of the log directory. Now, it doesn't give everything that's inside of the var directory, because there's other stuff that we're not getting from inside the var, but it is getting everything inside of the log directory. Okay. Now there's another tool for being able to transfer files with FTP. So again, the S on the front, secure, right? So secure FTP, right? But it'll use the SSH authentication to be able to get us onto this remote host in order to initiate our SFTP sessions. Okay. Now, because I've still yet to be able to get a networking system set up on my virtual machine, I still can't show these things to you in practice, but we can at least talk through them. We can at least talk through them in the examples given in the text here. Okay. All right. So just like with SSH or with anything like that, when we use the SFTP command, we're saying we want to connect to a remote host. We want to connect to a remote server. Okay. Now, when we SFTP to server X, it's the same way. It'll say, okay, well, what's your student? I'm gonna connect to student at server X. You're connected to student at desktop right now. I want to go to student at server. What's the password? I type that in, I connect in. Now notice the prompt changes, right? So now instead of having this information here, instead we have this information here. Okay. Now, in a lot of ways, the SFTP session is going to operate the same way like SSH. We can run commands. We can run such as ls, cd, right? We can make a directory. We can remove a directory. We can say, what's my current working directory? Okay, was my print working directory. But then the extra commands we didn't have access to before are the put and the get commands. Okay? And we will talk about that because that's really what SFTP is going to be useful for. Okay. So where we are now, when we use SFTP, okay, we're going to get into the home directory of whatever user that we're going to. We're going to that user. So the student at server X, we get connected to their home directory. Okay. Now, by the way, what I'm about to talk to you about is the reason why it's important that we still have access to this print working directory command, because Notice here, so we're in the home directory of the student. So we're in /home/student is where we are, okay, when we come in here, okay. We make a directory called host backup. We change directory into host backup. But notice that we don't know what directory we're in based on the prompt. The prompt just never changes from SF. Back here, you know, when we had this information here, we had all kinds of nice fun information, right? We could see who we were logged in as, we could see what the server was, we could see what folder name, what directory we were in, right? And then this symbol over here told us whether or not we were the super user or not, right? So we had lots of information here. We don't have any of that here. The only thing we know is that we are connected. Like, if we were sitting there doing SFTP stuff and our boss came up behind us and looked on our computer screen, or if we stepped away and had to go do something, we needed to go get coffee, or we needed to go, talk to a coworker about something, and we come back to our computer and we sit down and we see SFTP. We don't know anything. We don't know where we're connected to. We don't know who we're connected as. We don't know what folder we're in, right? So all we know is that we are connected through FTP to some remote server somewhere. That's all we know, right? So let's get into what happens here. So we make the directory host backup. We change into that host backup directory. Again, we don't know. We only know that we're in host backup because we just did the cd command. Okay, now put /etc/hosts. Now what's going to happen here is the put command is going to search my system, my local system, not the one I'm FTPing to, but the one that's local, the one that I'm on, and it's going to look for this file. Okay, it's going to look in the etc directory on my local system. It's going to look in that for a host file in that directory. It's going to find it because that file exists, and then it's going to upload it to the location that I am currently connected to through FTP. Now, where am I connected to through FTP? Well, looking back through all this, I am connected to the student account on server X. In the home directory, inside of the home directory, there's a host backup, and I'm inside of the host backup. So as you can see, it takes the etc host file and it sends it to, this is the location. So now we have a little bit more information just based on this, right? But the home directory, the student account, so the student's home, the student user's home directory, the host backup, right? The host backup folder we just created, and the host folder. Now, no, sorry, the host file. Now notice something, it doesn't maintain that etc portion of that file name, right? Because it's only copying the file itself. It's only copying the etc host file to a hosts file using that host file name on the remote server. Okay. Again, this would be similar to let me do this. I'm gonna show you guys how I do this. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm gonna share my folder view here. Let me pull this up. Okay. So notice here. Go up here and go to lab. Actually, I want to do this in the practice. Okay. Okay. Because we are in chapter 12, right? Okay. Okay. So we are chapter 12. Okay. And when I want to say copy the exercise for chapter 12, section 2, that's where we are right now, and I want to take this and move it into this folder. Notice that if I were to follow like what the file name for this is, it would be all of this, right, slash exercise chapter 12, section 2. But when I copy that over to here, I don't want all of this. I don't want all of this coming along as part of that long file name, right? I just want it to go into this folder, and I just want it to have the same file name. Now, the way that I copied this today was I just, I right-clicked over here and said, if it'll come up. Okay, and I did, copy, and then I came over here and I did paste, right? So I didn't run it through a command line argument, right? But what happened here is the same thing, as what's going on here. I'm wanting this file with this name to come to this location, and it keeps the same name. Okay. All right. Now, so this is how the put command works. Is it looks local for a file with this name, and it puts it into the folder that I'm currently in on the remote system. Get is the exact same thing, right? Okay. Now get is the exact same thing, but this time it's going to look on the remote system for the etc directory, the yum.config file from the remote location. It's going to get that file. It's going to take that. It's going to find that file. It's going to get it, and it's going to bring it down to the place that I'm connecting from. Okay, to the folder that I was in when I started the FTP session. Okay, so if we look back here, what folder was I in when I started the FTP session? I was in the student home directory when I started the FTP session. So get is going to take this file from the remote server, and it's going to put it into my student home directory on my local system. Okay, so make sure you remember that. It's all about whenever something is transferred from one place to another, the file we're looking for is going to use the path of wherever the file is coming from. So if it's coming from the local system, it's going to look for this path on the local system. It's going to it's going to take that file and place it in whatever folder I'm connected to on the remote system. Get, on the other hand, is going to look for the file using the path on the remote system, and it's going to place that file into the folder that I'm connected to on the local system when the FTP session started. Okay. All right. So we've done two sections. Okay, it's getting close to that break time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let's take a 10-minute break because I think we've done quite a bit of new material. So we're going to take that 10-minute break. 10:25 we'll come back and we'll finish up section 3 of this chapter, and I will do the examples, and then we will end the day there. Okay? All right, so I'll see you guys in 10 minutes, 10:25.